Hello.
Hello, Anthony. Hello, and welcome to a delayed episode of the Ender Show. We've deliberately delayed it so that it fits in with, so that next week's episode will fit in with the
Hello.
aftermath of. Hello, Alessandro. Will fit in with the
Hi.
aftermath of the 30th of June, which is obviously a key date for Inter. In terms of meeting the Plus Valenza requirements. But the big news today is Radja Nainggolan is now a full Interista. He's got all the medical stuff done. He's signed. He's here. Anthony, what do you think of this news?
Yeah, I'm really happy to see Radja come along and sign for us. Despite it seeming like a lengthy process the last couple of weeks, I think we all need to remember that with the World Cup going on, there's not too much transfer activity being accelerated in the football world. So I actually think we were able to get this deal done quite smoothly. Pros and cons of this move, I actually don't see many cons, despite the fact that maybe he's already come of age a little bit and he may be seen as someone who may take a slight decline. But I think the pros definitely outweigh the cons in a sense that we've got a very versatile physical player in a position that we really demanded a sort of physical and creative presence. Not only that, there's also the very rational point that, he's already played under Spalletti in a Spalletti-influenced system and in a team that he coped very well. I think the transition will be very smooth into our side and we don't have to worry about signing a player who's going to struggle to integrate into our system very quickly. So I'm very happy about that as well. What do you guys think of the Radja Nainggolan transfer?
What do you think, Alessandro?
Oh, I'm super happy, honestly. I think it's a great player. Last year wasn't doing the great, but it wasn't playing in the position it was used to. This year with Spalletti, I think is gonna return the awesome player he is. So I just can't wait.
Yeah, I think initially I was a bit hesitant over it because of his age and because of the type of player that he is. The players in that position do tend to age quicker than maybe a more defensive player. That said, I think it's a credit to. I don't always compliment Sonning and Auxilio, but I think it's a credit to both of them that they've got somebody that the manager really wanted. And after a little bit of uncertainty following Spalletti's last press conference, I see him in a situation now where he literally has to commit himself going forward. He can't now turn around and say, Inter haven't done what I wanted them to do, because the one player that he's seemingly wanted ever since he came to Inter, they've gone out and they've gotten him. I think it's really positive, and it shows that the club is very willing to back Spalletti and also to spend money when it thinks that the money wasn't spending. Obviously, they've let Cancelo and probably Rafinha go, and I would say that the deal with Nainggolan is the nail in the coffin as far as Rafinha coming back to Inter is concerned. But whilst they were hesitant to spend the money there, they've spent the money with Nainggolan, which shows a real sort of decisiveness, I think, as well. My only concern is how does this affect our Plus Valenza? I've read in, like I said, the Della Sport that it actually works in our favour because Santon and Zaniolo are going to Roma, but I can't understand how spending a lot of money on a player at this stage before the 30th of June is helpful to that situation. Do either of you better understand it than I do?
Not really at the moment, Andrew. So Alessandro actually might if he wants to give it a go.
So I'm not 100% sure, but it is possible that they're gonna put Nainggolan expenses in the 2018-19 season, while they keep the two Santon and Zaniolo in this season for Plus Valencia. I don't know. Again, I'm not totally sure, but I was reading an article and they were saying that this 25 million are gonna be included next season. So I don't know how exactly it works, but that's what I got.
So basically, if I'm understanding you right, it's clever accountancy.
Correct.
Yeah. Once they're dotting their I's and crossing their T's, because the last thing that we want is to do something like this and then find ourselves in a tricky situation, particularly when we can really stamp home the advantage, at least in our own backyard, because Milan just seem to be going from crisis to crisis. There is talk about them being purchased by a new owner. There's talk of them potentially getting a huge fine from UEFA. They really seem like they're on a very drastic downward spiral. And it really doesn't look good for them, which might work in our favour in terms of another transfer target, which is Jesus Sousa. There was on FC Inter News. There is a poll on which winger would you prefer, Malcolm, Politano, Sousa, or none of the three. Alessandro, where would you go? Which would you pick if money was no object?
Probably I would pick Sousa. I'm a big fan. I think if I should pick a couple of players from our cousins, I would pick Sousa and Conti. If you look at the derby of the last couple of years, Sousa was the main problem for us. It's quick. It's a small player, but really quick, and he has a good vision. And he's not even that old. I think it should be younger than Politano. Not 100% sure about that. He knows Italian football very well, and so that said, I'm really curious about the UEFA decision and this Milan situation. Somebody said it's gonna be like 2 years without Europe plus some fine. I don't know. It sounds awful.
It sounds really bad for them. I'm just wondering how deep the problems go, because obviously big clubs like probably not as big as Milan, but big clubs in the past have found themselves in very difficult situations to do with finance. I'm thinking primarily in this part of the world of Rangers. Obviously, Milan is a bigger club. I'd like to say they're not, but Milan is a bigger club than Rangers. But if it happens to one big club, I personally hope it doesn't, because I'd miss the derbies. But a severely weakened Milan, I wouldn't complain about.
If I can add one thing,
yeah.
Not only that, but if it's really going to be 2 years without Europe, I wonder what's the point playing Serie A for them. No matter what position they're gonna get, they're not gonna be able to play in Europe, and that's a big turn down for players, for the market they're gonna do. So it's I don't know. It's a really tricky situation.
Yeah, Anthony, what do you think of it?
Yeah, that last bit that Alessandro said really summed it up really well. In terms of the motivational factor of players coming to Milan, they were already struggling to attract names as it is. Brings back some painful memories of the likes of, Kuzmanovic and Gargano and Dodò and all those mediocre players coming to us in a really poor period of time that we sort of gave false hope to, thinking, oh, let's give them a chance. I'm sure they're up to the task. I don't think Milan are going to be able to attract many players that are up to the task. And as Alessandro said, the UEFA ruling of no European football puts a huge dent in the structure, in their motivation and prosperity heading forward. In regards to maybe taking advantage of their situation, I will definitely be looking at going for Suso. I think when we did play them the last couple of times, he was looking at like the only dangerous one in their attack. So I think if we were to do the whole two birds with one stone thing by weakening a rival and taking one of their more talented players, I'd be all for it. And I think everyone should be thinking of maybe a potential swap with Kandreva there. It makes a lot of logical sense. And if we have to include a tiny little bit of money on top of that, so be it. But I think we're in a position right now where we can afford to be, just a little bit of a flat track bully to AC Milan if they were to cooperate with us in the transfer market. Other than that, don't have much to say about Suso and Milan's transfer situation. But I was reading something interesting yesterday that you guys might want to comment on. It looks as though Chelsea are actually pretty keen and interested in landing Vecino. And I know that the Inter community is a little bit divided on whether or not to keep him, but I actually see this as a great opportunity for us to cash in on maybe the ignorance and the naivety of the English sides, because we as Inter fans saw the struggle last season that Vecino was having in our side. But a lot of those other bigger sides like the Chelseas and the English sides, they'll look at that header in the last match against Lazio and they'll see him as a true prospect and as a really, really good, influential player. I'm not saying Vecino is a bad player. I think that's an unfair statement to say after a year that was full of topsy-turvy moments, but I just think he's being valued by Chelsea at a superior price. I think it's around the 35 million mark. So another two birds, one stone opportunity there if we were to maybe send Vecino their way and get maybe Zappacosta plus a little bit of cash. I think that would be another masterstroke. What do you guys reckon?
I would agree with you. I think there's a lot of players. The accusation of a strong level of inconsistency can be levelled at Inter at the moment. Reflecting on last season, and I wouldn't be quick to get rid of Vecino. But if it is the sort of fee that you're talking about, then I think it would make perfect financial sense. Now, he is, to my understanding anyway, he's playing very well for Uruguay in the World Cup, which is a sign that he is a good player, and I do believe that he is. But if he's being overvalued, then we should definitely cash in on that, I think. Just very quickly, my own opinion on Suso. Why I would like him as opposed to the other options is he's already proven that he can cut it at a big club. He's proven that he can handle the pressure of playing at the Miazza. And in that vein, it would almost be a change of shirt and very little else for him, because he's already accustomed to living in Milan. He's already able to handle that. He's able to adapt to the Italian lifestyle and the Milanese lifestyle. He's able to, as I said, handle the pressure of playing at the San Siro and for a big club week in, week out. I think it makes perfect sense. Alessandro, what do you think of the Vecino thing that Anthony was talking about?
I think if we really can exchange Vecino for Zappacosta and some cash, that would make the perfect transfer season for us. We will cover the right back position, something that we really need to work on. Losing a midfielder is something that's not that hard to replace nowadays. Losing Vecino and find something with the same quality or even better, it shouldn't be a problem. Or we can even pick up somebody from the young team. So I will be So happy.
And what about the idea of William Carvalho coming to Indra? As it stands, he potentially, though it's probably unlikely, would come on a free because he's walked away from his contract at Sporting Lisbon. Basically, from what I've read, the Sporting players were threatened by their ultras at the end of the season when they missed out on Champions League football, which, it's similar to ourselves, would be an absolute must for a club of that stature. He's one of the group of players who've walked away from their contracts. Is a little bit up in the air at the moment because the owner of Sporting Lisbon is apparently looking into possibility of legal action against these players, and that could lead to, or probably would lead to, some element of a transfer fee, but it's likely to be much reduced. What the Italian press is saying at the moment is it would either be Carvalho or Dembele from Tottenham. Which way would you go with that, Alessandro?
So, starting with the situation of Sporting, it seems like the president quit. I mean, he left the club, as far as I know today. So I think that situation is to update, and I don't know what's going to happen with all the players. I think up today nobody actually left the club, so I see a lot of speculation there. I don't think something's going to happen. But if um, if the players are actually leaving, and we don't have to pay, why not? I mean, it's a free player. It's a good level. I would not invest any money, honestly, on him. I rather take Dembele, but I think we should look for other players. Dembele, for what I read, would be interested to join Inter just because of the possibility to move in China after. So a player that think in that way, I don't think is actually coming to give everything for the team. It sounds more like he's trying to, um,
Set up a retirement
some
plan.
money and see the future. And so I don't know. I'm not crazy about neither of them.
And which would you pick one of them, Anthony, or would you be of the opinion that there's better out there?
I'd say Dembele is a much better player than William Carvalho. Not only that, he's playing for a top team in a top league in the Premier League. I'm very skeptical of bringing players over from our team that haven't already got experience in, say, maybe England, Spain, or Germany. I think that's a bit of a risk when you jump out of those leagues and purchase players from maybe the French or the Portuguese or the Turkish league. I think it's just a little bit more of a liability, and we've been burnt in the past with some players from these leagues. I don't think Carvalho is the kind of player we are looking for. That being said, if it was a free transfer, I would take him with open arms, because for a free player, he does bring qualities to the team that are very beneficial. I'm more concerned about getting involved in Carvalho for legal reasons. If Sporting are threatening to take legal action against these players, we're in a position at the moment where we don't need to be involved with this kind of behavior, even if there's a small risk associated with it. We've done all this hard work to get ourselves to a level where we don't need to look behind our shoulder and worry about certain stuff like Milan is worrying about. So I don't think the right decision is to go undercutting Sporting and going for William Carvalho on a free. If it so happens that we need to invest some money in him, I'd be investing the absolute bare minimum. But yeah, definitely not too much. I think Dembele is a better choice. I think the whole deal with him maybe moving to us and then bouncing off to China, while it does make sense logically and would provide a clear path for him to come here, what Alessandro said could be true. He could maybe see it as more of setting up a retirement plan rather than going somewhere with motivation and prosperity to continue succeeding. If you're asking me who I'd choose between the two, I'd go Dembele for sure. I think he'd form a good relationship with Brozovic and Radja Nainggolan. I honestly think would be the scariest midfield in the league, to be honest, if he was to come. But something in the back of my head is still saying just hold on to the thought of Rafinha. I still really want to see him here next season. And if he's another player that, if July 1 hits and he still hasn't found a club and we're more than willing to put money on the table for him, maybe even at a reduced price because, we won't be under an obligation to purchase him for that fixed price anymore. We'll see how we go. So long story short, I'd take Dembele over Carvalho, but I've still got my Rafinha tinted goggles on, to be honest, guys.
I'd agree with you. The problem is, and obviously, there's been fabulously talented footballers that have come from that have played in leagues that aren't of sort of the top quality and have still gone on to play football in sort of the big four leagues and have a very huge impact. I'm thinking of people like Cristiano Ronaldo, Figo, even Henrik Larsson spent 7 years at Celtic, and no disrespect to any of those leagues or the clubs that they were with, but they moved on and played for top draw and were the best, were amongst the best players in those teams. But I am hesitant to plug a player directly out of a league that's sort of a little bit below the Italian, German, English and Spanish leagues, and put them into a league where they're expected to perform week in, week out against, let's be honest, 16, 17 other clubs that are going to give you a hard game every week. There's a big difference between playing for a big club when particularly your away matches are going to be very, very hard week in, week out, to playing for a huge club in a smaller pond. So I would go with Dembele on that front. I think there's not much else happened at Inter at the moment, but obviously the World Cup is going on, so we can't let the show go by without referencing that. Anthony, I think you've a big match. Is it tomorrow? It's tomorrow morning your time, I think, is it?
Yeah, it's our time tomorrow morning up against Peru. It is a big one. So Australia, we need a lot of goals, and we need France to score a lot of goals against Denmark as well for us to have a shot.
And do you think you can make it through?
I think we're showing a lot of heart, a lot of fight, and a lot of tenacity. I think during the build-up to the World Cup, there was a lot of pessimism because I think we were the last nation out of 32 to actually appoint a head coach. But then with Van Marwijk coming in, he's definitely implemented a style of football in Australia that we don't see very often. The players are taking more time on the ball to pass it around and create a very good structured attack, whereas Australia was a national team that, would hoof the ball forward pretty much 9 times out of 10 against superior opponents. So, I think the boys have definitely done their job already. They'll come home to a very, very proud reception, but one game left and we're all in for it 100%.
Yeah, I just looking at the group actually. My reading of it is that Denmark at the moment have +1 goal difference, and Australia are on -1 goal difference, and there's 3 points between them. So it doesn't actually require that big a swing for Australia to get through, and Australia have scored the same amount of goals as as Denmark. So my understanding would be if France were to beat Denmark 1-0, and remember France are going to want to top the group. If France were to beat Denmark 1-0 and Australia were to win 1-0, that would take Australia through. The only problem I can see is in Italy, they called it the Biscotto. If France and Denmark were to somehow draw their match, not suggesting for a minute that they will, but if they were, then that would suit France, because France would finish top of the group and Denmark would also go through. But I don't know how much these kind of things are paper talk or how much they happen in reality. I know Alessandro is an Italian. You'll have a bad memory of that.
Oh yeah, very bad memory. I think we were on the original Biscotto big team.
Just run us through that again.
Oh, I think we needed what was it? Sweden, and honestly, I don't remember the other team. Denmark, yeah, one of the two to win, and they play a really bad game, finished 2-2 if I'm not if I remember well. Yeah, it was just painful to watch. But I mean, I can't really say anything in this World Cup.
But it was a situation where if Denmark and Sweden drew 2 each, it meant that whatever happened in Italy's match, Italy were out. Is my understanding of it, and lo and behold, it ended up as a 2-2 draw, and the rest I think is history. Who's caught your eye at the World Cup this year, Alessandro?
I have to say Belgium and England. They're looking really good. It is true they didn't play against any big name, but as I was saying a couple of weeks ago, I think on paper Belgium team is awesome. They have maybe the defense is not as strong as the midfielder and the attack, but I don't see any defense in any national team that strong. Maybe Brazil on paper, but just on paper.
I would have said, and probably a slight bias here, but I would have said France has caught my eye whilst not playing particularly good football, because defensively they seem to be rock solid, and they're almost going through the tournament so far anyway in a very un-French style, more like a German style of being efficient, getting the job done, but not necessarily being spectacular. And I do think that basis can stand to them going on through the tournament. I was also going to say until today that I thought Russia had been playing very well, but obviously they got hammered today by Uruguay, which perhaps paints a different picture. The matches that have just finished was heart-wrenching for Morocco because they missed out on beating Spain with a controversial Spanish goal in injury time. It was onside. I would have loved to have seen Morocco win, but there's no point in me saying otherwise. It was onside, and the decision to go to VAR and award the goal was correct. But I would have loved to have seen them win it, particularly as they've had a disappointing World Cup. It would have given them something to be proud of on the way home. Iran have had a really significant World Cup, and they're unlucky to have gone out tonight. They beat Morocco in the first match. They only went down 1-0 to Spain in the second, and they drew with Iran. They drew with Portugal tonight, and one more goal would have meant that they went through. So it's a huge credit in regards to their performance. And Anthony, what's your reading of the tournament so far?
Yeah, I'll agree with you in a sense that France really haven't gotten out of second gear, but they've been able to get the job done. You know, when we're watching the match Australia versus France, a couple of friends that I was with who don't watch football on a week-to-week basis domestically, you know, were up in arms saying, you know, this France team isn't that good. Australia's giving them a run for money. But when you analyze it from a footballing perspective, this is just a French team who is absolutely stocked to the depth with world-class talent. So that's why they are able to carry out the entire intensity of the 90 minutes plus more at pretty much the same rate that they have the whole match. When teams start to get fatigued, they'll stay at the same level of intensity and they'll get the job done. So while they haven't, you know, lit the World Cup on fire, I'd say France are still head and shoulders my favorite to take it home. Other notable nations, I think, yeah, England and Belgium are doing well, but I'll just be very skeptical about how they fare in the round of 16 because they've had two very easy matches and they'll come up against each other in a fixture where the loser basically gets a second chance. And of course, we all want to top the group, but I think that'll make the teams play a little bit more complacent than they would if there was something on the line. I know Lukaku, who's been on fire so far, will probably be rested for the match because he picked up a small knock in his quad or something like that, something that he's not going to be risked for the England game. But other than that, we've seen a few big nations like struggle and stumble to get over the line, like Germany, like Spain. So very interesting going forward. We'll see what happens. But I'd say France is still my favorite. I'm looking at the table right now, and you know, with that win, Uruguay takes the top spot. Russia finishes second, and I didn't realize that table there at the end in Group B actually changed right at the end as well, with Iran's late equalizer and Spain's late equalizer. Portugal and Spain have swapped positions, so we've now got Spain up top in Group B, who will play Uruguay. Spain on top in Group B, who will now play Russia, and Portugal, who will play Uruguay. I personally feel as though Portugal will go into that match more confident than going in against Russia. Even if Uruguay are a slightly better team and more compact, I think playing the hosts is just something that you don't really want to do just yet. Yeah, just not just yet in the tournament. So I think Spain will have their work cut out for them in the round of 16.
Yeah, and just to reference other news that's happened during the past week, the under-16 team joined the under-15 and Primavera sides as Scudetto champions. Then today, the Inter under-17 women's team also won the Scudetto. So the youth department is really working very, very well. That's all we've got to cover for tonight. My thanks to Anthony and to Alessandro, and I'll sign off with Forza Inter and let Alessandro and Anthony sign off in their own way.
Thanks, Andrew. Thanks, Alessandro. Forza Inter. Till next time.
Thank you, guys. Always a pleasure. Forza Inter.